Excellencies, members of the high-level panel, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking the Executive Director of the UNFPA, our own Professor Osotimehin, our former Minister of Health, now belongs to UNFPA, and his entire staff for organizing this important conference and for inviting me to address this meeting. I should like to convey Nigeria's appreciation of the United Nations commitment to the promotion of human rights, especially the rights of women and children, to enjoy healthy living and equal opportunities. Let me also note from the outset that since the Cairo Conference of 1994, significant progress has been made at the national, regional, and global levels towards the realization of the ICPD Program of Action. I should also say that I'm really happy today to have met Professor Fred Chai, who chaired that meeting, and of course to be sitting close to Dr. Membat, who also was part of that development. The POA, adopted by 179 governments at the 1994 International Conference on Population and Development in Cairo, and reaffirmed in many international intergovernmental negotiations since then, recognizes that for all of us to realize our full potentials and our reproductive rights, we must be able to exercise our right to attain the highest standard of sexual and reproductive health. The ICPD-POA underscores the rights, policies, programs, and enabling conditions that all individuals, particularly women and young people, need in order to successfully manage for themselves issues related to their sexuality, reproduction, and health. It is important at the same time to point out that in spite of the gains achieved, there are still some gaps in implementation in many regions of the world, particularly Africa. These goals have not been fulfilled for many, especially for those who are poor, young, female, disabled, or displaced. Those that are too frequently marginalized, including members of racial, ethnic, and other minorities. Mr. Chairman, central to the progress made so far is the conceptualization of the POA within the framework of human development. Towards advancing the relevance of the POA, regional protocols have been adopted to reinforce the ICPD structure. These include the Maputo Protocol, the Maputo Plan of Action on Sexual Reproductive Health and Rights, the Abuja Declaration of 2001, the Campaign for Accelerated Reduction of Maternal Mortality in Africa, CARMA, the Abuja Plus 12 Declaration, as well as the Abuja 2013 Declaration of the High-Level Meeting of the Global Power Women Network Africa, a continental organization I have the privilege to chair as president. The time frame for achievement of the MDGs was set for 2015. Many of the population and development goals identified in the ICPD-POA were incorporated into the MDGs. These include halving extreme poverty, reducing maternal and infant mortality, halting the spread of HIV and AIDS, and providing universal primary education. The Secretary General of the UN has stated that the work of the post-2015 agenda be grounded in a critical evaluation of how the MDGs have worked as a framework, identifying what has worked well and areas for improvement, especially in response to current development challenges. Unfortunately, Africa still shows the least progress in most ICPD and related indicators. This situation is compounded by the region's rapid population growth, adverse effects of climate change and global warming, violent conflicts, and limited resources. Mr. Chairman, the progress made by your organization, by the UNFPA, in achieving its goals of universal access to sexual and reproductive health, including family planning, promoting reproductive rights, reducing maternal mortality, and accelerating progress on the ICPD agenda on MDG 5 cannot be overemphasized. Available statistics show that a lot more than 2,000 young people are infected daily with HIV. 1 in 3 girls in developing countries under 18 are married off without their consent, while over 200 million women in these countries lack access to modern methods of contraception, leading to life-threatening implications. It is imperative to mention that UNFPA also focuses on improving the lives of youth and women by promoting the understanding of population dynamics. Population dynamics, including growth rates, age structure, fertility and mortality, and migration, have an effect on every aspect of human, social, and economic progress. In addition, sexual and reproductive health and women's empowerment all powerfully affect and are influenced by population trends. It is pertinent to note that the POA is due to formally come to an end in 2014, but that its goals and objectives remain valid beyond 2014. Keeping in mind that many governments may not meet all the goals and objectives of the POA by 2014, it becomes necessary to prepare tools that will be used to drive the development agenda beyond this year. I'm aware that the UNFPA is working with a broad coalition of partners to ensure that the principles of the ICPD, including its emphasis on the right of all individuals to sexual and reproductive health, remain at the core of any future development agenda. It is therefore essential to continue engaging the use of diplomacy in bringing representatives of states and governments together to negotiate on best practices so that the principles and strategies put in place towards the realization of the objectives of ICPD would be tenable beyond the post-2015 development agenda. While intensifying our efforts to ensuring the realization of the ICPD objectives, we should promote assessment missions so as to identify existing gaps, challenges, and solutions, as well as engage in mutual exchange of information and sharing of best practices and experiences, of course. On this note, I want to appreciate the recent visit to Nigeria, to my country, by the Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UNFPA, Prof Yem, where he had useful discussions with relevant stakeholders, including the National Population Commission, on such pertinent issues relating to having ready data on major national and demographic surveys. Globally also, I think, it is time such data be useful in creating programs to reduce poverty, address matters concerning the rights of the different population groups, as well as help reduce sexually transmitted diseases, including HIV and AIDS, and ensuring that every girl, child, and woman is treated with dignity and respect. Mr. Chairman, it is imperative also to mention that the transformation agenda of my President, His Excellency President Goodluck Jonathan, DCFR, has gender equality and empowerment as one of its cardinal principles in order to ensure development. This, our President has exhibited in his appointment of more women into his cabinet than ever before in Nigeria. At the beginning of his presidency, out of 42 ministers, 13 of them were female. And female in key ministries as finance, petroleum, education, environment, power, FCT, defense, water resources, environment, aviation, information communication technology. That was a major show of confidence by our president in the Human Food, and we thank him for that. We also hope that other heads of government will emulate, not just in numbers, but in quality of assignment given, because the women can always deliver. So also, Mr. President of Nigeria appointed the first female chief judge, and recently, the first female head of the appellate court, the #2 court in Nigeria, is also appointed another female. Mr. President has in addition directed all ministries, departments, and agencies of government to reserve a quota for women whenever they are employed. Amongst his numerous policies aimed at empowering women and the girl child, these have continued to happen. Also recently, the Senate of Nigeria has just passed the National Health Bill. The Violence Against Persons Prohibition Bill has passed the third reading in the legislature, and it is awaiting ratification by the upper house. Mr. Chairman, a key role of government through diplomacy is the ownership and management of the ICPD review process, especially during the global survey, involving broad-based dialogue between the national authorities on one hand, and civil society and other development agencies on the other. New thinking and renewed vigor in our approach and partnerships can bring us closer through negotiation with UNFPA member states in attaining the ICPD goals for current and future generations of young people. I would therefore like to propose that the global community pays sufficient attention to the vital role of data gathering in the implementation of the ICPD beyond 2014 agenda. All levels of government, Mr. Chairman, are key participants in the evidence gathering process and in the consultations at national level. Their participation is crucial to ensuring that the process is robust, that the results based on the best available data, and that the voices of various stakeholders are considered. Government, through the diplomatic channel, leadership and involvement at every level, is bound to help deliver reports that are credible, compelling, and those that will see the themes of ICPD addressed in future UN Global Development Goals. The developing member states of the UNFPA need to shift their approaches and thinking from aid to investment. Investments targeted to produce tangible returns. The political will must be mobilized to take on the biggest obstacles to a country's own development. The surest path to creating more prosperous societies requires diplomacy, good relations between two countries, indigenous political will, responsive, effective, accountable, and transparent governance. End of terrorism as well. And then the broad-based, inclusive economic growth, above all, peace and security. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the states must move forward to meet the ICPD goals and not lose momentum in the face of resistance or persistent challenges. Some of these persistent challenges include reducing the rates of mortality and morbidity related to sexual and reproductive health, particularly for women and adolescent girls, stopping the increased setback and lifelong trauma caused by rape, trafficking, and violence against women. In addition, with over 40% of the world's population under the age of 25, we must increase efforts to meet the needs of adolescents and youth and secure their healthy transition to adulthood. Working in partnership with young people, states need to support and provide provide quality education equally for girls and boys, at least through the secondary school. Then make comprehensive sexuality education available for all adolescents and youth. Ensure that health services, particularly sexual and reproductive health services, are accessible to young people. Work to prevent and respond to physical and sexual violence against young people, especially women. Promote and protect their reproductive rights, as well as ensure inclusive growth and economic empowerment. It should be priority that women and girls everywhere achieve the freedom to decide for themselves on matters of their own sexuality, so they may enjoy strong, healthy families and live in thriving communities and nations. This we are trying to do in Nigeria by discouraging early marriages and promoting the rights of women, healthy lifestyles, as well as, of course, her ability to marry the man of her choice. Without the enabling environment that will be created through active diplomacy, sustained development progress will remain out of reach. Development, which goes along with diplomacy and defense, is essential to member states. Traditional development approaches need to be broadened to produce a strategy of influence, engagement, and reform mobilization. As a professor of biochemistry, yes, professor of biochemistry, I stress that because it would seem the UN does not realize that women can be professors too. In this meeting today, the chairman introduced the male professors, and the women professors will go with Mrs. And that is the problem. We have to start from home. Women must be recognized for their achievements. It doesn't matter what the men feel. So if women, if they don't say we are, we will say we are. We will emphasize and also ensure that we belong to, this world belongs to all of us, not just to the men. So if they don't recognize us, we recognize ourselves. So, I said as a professor of biochemistry, and a proud one at that, as well as a former executive member of the Executive Committee of the International Health Society in Geneva, I believe education is fundamental to the progress of every society, and it is the first prerequisite to sustainable development. I laud the recent initiative of the UN Secretary General, Education First, and call on all members of the global community to support that initiative. Also, for our strategic partners and partnerships and collaborative efforts, we need to come together to promote quality education at all levels. This, if achieved, will greatly reduce the incidences and prevalence of HIV and AIDS, and increase the longevity of persons living with HIV and AIDS. I'm convinced that quality education will close inequities relating to gender, geography, and socio-economic status, particularly for women and girls. The rural and urban poor, persons also with disabilities, young people, especially girls in conflict situations, those living with HIV, and other marginalized communities as well. I'm also convinced that as long as rapists walk the streets after inflicting lifelong trauma and HIV virus on women and girls, while the world keeps quiet or does little, the issue of development will elude us. The world must stop paying lip service for the issues about the issues of women, especially issues about violence against women, if we must move ahead. In concluding, as the global dialogue dialogue on the post-2015 development agenda gains momentum, the continued relevance of the ICPD POA to the agenda cannot be overstated. It is in this regard that I urge governments and development partners to demonstrate the necessary political will and commitment to the ICPD agenda through mobilizing financial resources and creating enabling environments for the implementation of interventions to address global population and development challenges. Finally, before I resume my seat, as I go back to my seat, I'll present copies of the Abuja Commitment of the Women of Africa, the Global Power Women Network, Abuja Commitment 2013, to the Executive Director for his information and necessary action. And leave you all with the fact that for any international project to succeed, nations must come together to resolve. Nations must come together to act, and that would mean diplomacy at work at the topmost gear. Thank you very much for your time.